The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I am now in my 7th year working alongside Bob, originating our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I'm joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. How we doing out there in beautiful Las Vegas?
I'm doing great, Tan. There's no exaggeration on beautiful Las Vegas this morning. I went and hit a little spin cycle on the strip, so got a nice little strip view. Had all that good stuff going this morning. So yeah, just ready for week 3 of the NFL.
Have you seen the sphere out there? It looks crazy, the videos I'm seeing online.
Yes, if you guys haven't seen the sphere, look that up. It is one of the most insane things I've ever seen. I need to go see a concert there.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
All right, so our first segment is where we will be grading these scriptwriters on how they did for episode 2 of this new NFL season. So, the early slate had an absolute thriller between the Packers and Falcons. The Falcons had just a 10% win probability near the end of the third quarter as they were down 24-12. Arthur Smith brought out a trick play to get the offense going, and they would come within 2 points in the final 8 minutes. The Falcons were in clear field goal range with 2 minutes left in this game, and Arthur Smith put his trust in rookie running back on 4th and 1 to set up a go-ahead field goal with a minute left, and the Falcons would walk away with the victory 25-24. How great was that game, Dan?
Yeah, we were on the Falcons, and I do think Arthur Smith made the right decision to go for it on 4th and 1. It looked like he was adding about 5% in win probability to, keep the ball, make sure that the Packers didn't get a long drive, and obviously the Packers had to waste their timeouts there at the end. So I think it was the right choice, but certainly that play was incredibly nerve-wracking as a Falcons backer. But yeah, I mean, this Atlanta offense, it's kind of like what we expected. It's flowing through the running backs. They've got a league-high 56 run-play rate, and they're averaging 0.05 EPA per rush, which is second in the NFL. And then Bijan Robinson ranks 6th among running backs, averaging 0.2 EPA per target. When the Falcons do drop back and they're not looking at running backs, they're one of the 3 offenses in the league targeting tight ends on more than 30% of passes. And Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts should be the focal points this week in Detroit because the Lions have allowed a league-high 170 receiving yards to tight ends after surrendering 8.2 yards per target to tight ends last season, which was 27th in the NFL.
Yeah, and do you want to see the young quarterback kind of look downfield more often?
For Ritter, I mean, I don't know if it's him, if it's Arthur Smith, or what the deal is. But it was those, Arthur Smith was calling the plays last year, and wide receiver Drake London averaged 2.07 yards per route run, which ranked 12th in the NFL. And now he's kind of just been phased out of the offense. I certainly think that Ritter should be looking deep to London more often. And maybe this is the week because London should be lined up across from Detroit cornerback Jerry Jacobs, who ranks 14th worst in PFF coverage grade.
Yeah, for my fantasy team, I am hoping he starts targeting London a little bit more. But let's look at our Sunday night game between the Dolphins and Patriots. Tua was looking to improve on his 4-0 record against Coach Bill Belichick, and the team got out to a great start. The Patriots were clearly trying to take away the deep plays by Tyreek and Waddle, but this left the door wide open for Raheem the Dream Mostert to just run wild on him. And the Dolphins were leading 17-3 by halftime. It looked like the door was going to be shut on a field goal to go up 17, but the Patriots pulled off one of the most incredible field goal blocks I've ever seen. The Patriots were able to claw and fight their way back into this game, and it was 24-17, and they went for that 4th down conversion where we saw Mike Gesicki pitch a ball back to offensive guard Cole Strange, who would be stopped just inches short. This game was pretty wild. I mean, it started out slow, but what'd you take away from this game?
Yeah, well, I was really hoping the Patriots would get awarded that first down. We didn't have a bad side or total, but it felt like it just took all the air out of what would have been a pretty awesome comeback stemming from that incredible field goal block you mentioned. But on the other side of the ball, the Dolphins, I mean, it's incredible what Mike McDaniel is doing. I mean, it's brilliant offense. Tua is on pace to be the first quarterback since tracking to average more than 10 air yards per attempt, despite having an average time to throw of less than 2.3 seconds. And that implies that McDaniel and, I mean, obviously the skill of Tyreek and Jaylen Waddle are getting open incredibly fast down the field, more so than we've pretty much ever seen, at least in my time handicapping the NFL. I do think it could be a little bit unsustainable as more tape goes out on this Dolphins attack, and opposing coordinators get used to this short motion stuff that they come out with this season.
And should we be concerned about some of the injuries for the Dolphins this week versus the Broncos?
I talked about how awesome the offenses looked with utilizing the speed of their top two wide receivers, but they might be without Jaylen Waddle this week. It looks like he got a concussion last Sunday night at the time of this recording. He has not cleared protocol, and Waddle had a league-leading 0.64 EPA per target last season. And if he's not on the field, that means that Denver's Pat Surtain, who ranked second in PFF coverage grade last year, is an all-pro cornerback, will likely be able to shadow Tyreek Hill with help over the top, because the Broncos won't be worried about what Waddle could do in single coverage if he's not on the field. So I don't know. We'll have to see how the Dolphins adjust without Waddle. I think he's certainly worth a half point to Miami's offense.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of these injuries, let's move on to our next segment, the injury watch. What are your thoughts on losing one of the league's best rushers?
Well, yeah. So Nick Chubb led the NFL in rushing yards over expected from 2018 to 2022, according to the model from Tej Seth. You can go to X to see the graph that he tweeted out there. And I think that Chubb does matter. I'm not one of those all running backs don't matter guys. I think most of them don't matter. For example, we're not adjusting at all for the loss of Saquon Barkley for the Giants. But I think that, Chubb's ability to get more than what's blocked for him will certainly make a difference for this Browns run game. And I think there's other running backs that apply to this as well. I mean, I think it's safe to say that Christian McCaffrey was part of the reasons the Niners went on that run with Brock Purdy down the stretch. And McCaffrey's probably also worth about a half point to the 49ers offense, but there's really only about 5-6 running backs that I would be making an adjustment for, and Chubb is one of those guys. However, the loss of Chubb might not be felt as much in this matchup because you already want to throw on Tennessee's defense, and I think Kevin Stefanski is the kind of guy that would have had Chubb take a step back even if he was healthy, because the Titans ranked 25th in EPA per dropback allowed and 4th in EPA per rush. So in this particular game, I don't think the loss of Chubb is going to be felt as much as it will the rest of the season.
Yeah, it feels like the people are pretty down on Deshaun Watson right now, but I wouldn't be shocked, as you just said. Tennessee's easy to throw on. Deshaun might pop off for a big game here, but what about the injuries in this Lions and Falcons game?
Well, these teams are trending in opposite directions from an injury standpoint. I mean, Lions safety CJ Gardner-Johnson is out indefinitely with a torn pec, and Gardner-Johnson has been Detroit's second highest graded defender this season, according to Pro Football Focus. And we had Gardner-Johnson as the Lions' best player on defense heading into this year. So he's out, and he's worth about a half point.
Yeah, and it looks like the Lions O-line might have a big injury as well.
Yeah, Dan Campbell said that Big V could be out for a bit. And he's, of course, referring to, let me see if I can say it, Halapuli Vaitai? I don't know. Have you heard that name pronounced, the first name? I know the last name is Vaitai, but I've never heard the first name pronounced.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
Well, he's a starting guard for the Lions. He could be out, which would be a problem against the Falcons, as they have Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata on the interior. Those two have combined for 12 pressures already this season. And Goff could also not have left tackle Taylor Decker protecting his blind side for the second straight game. And Lions backup tackle Matt Nelson allowed a quarterback hit and a hurry on just 20 true pass blocking sets last week.
Yeah, and it looks like Amon-Ra's been playing through something with his foot. How much is that going to impact this offense?
Yeah, they had to put a steel plate in his cleat, so he's certainly not 100%. And Detroit's best wide receiver is clearly Amon-Ra. He's averaging 0.73 EPA per target this season. But I mean, if he's not at full strength, and the Falcons can shadow him with AJ Terrell, who's conceding only 4.4 yards per target this year, I don't know. Where's Jared Goff gonna go with the football this week? I mean, the Falcons' pass defense in general is allowing just a 41% success rate, which ranks 9th in the NFL. And now they'll have starting cornerback Jeff Okudah make his debut this week after backup cornerback Trey Flowers had ranked 3rd worst in PFF coverage grade through weeks 1 and weeks 2. So the Falcons already 9th in dropback success rate allowed, and now they could be getting even better.
Yeah, we saw the Eagles get banged up in their secondary. How much is this going to hurt them this week?
Well, the good news for the Eagles is that it looks like that they'll have James Bradberry back, but they lost starting Nickelback Avonte Maddox, and backup Nickelback Mario Goodrich has allowed 0.92 more yards per cover snap in the slot than Maddox did in 2022. And it looks like Maddox is going to be out for the year. Now, Goodrich being out there instead of Maddox will provide a favorable matchup on the inside for Buccaneers wide receiver Chris Godwin, who gained 1.64 yards per route run in the slot last year, which ranked 10th among slot receivers. Although we've seen new Buccaneers offensive coordinator Dave Canales not give Godwin as many snaps in the slot, but I'd like to see that turn around in this game and line him up on the inside more like we saw last season, just due to the matchup.
All right. Well, it looks like Houston is trending up this week on both sides of the ball. What's going on with them?
Yeah, they'll likely get back left tackle Laramie Tunsil, and starting safety Jimmy Ward is in line to make his debut. And Tunsil conceded only 17 pressures last season, which ranks 7th among all tackles. And Ward was a solid solid safety under D'Amico Ryans when he played as a true safety in 2021, conceding just 5.7 yards per target. It's no wonder the Texans decided to bring him over from San Francisco this offseason. So Ward and Tunsil combined are worth about 4.2% in win probability for the Texans by our metrics. So I think that they're getting a little bit of a boost this week on both sides of the ball.
Nice. Great for the Texans. I think they've been kind of surprising people. I know their record isn't really showing it, but I think the quarterback's been looking good. Nico Collins stepping up, a couple of other young receivers. But let's move over to our next segment, which is public opinion talk with me. And our first thing we are going to talk about: do the Browns miss Baker Mayfield?
Well, Baker has played well this year. He certainly looked better than Deshaun Watson. So I can see Cleveland fans feeling a little bit of regret letting Baker move on and signing that massive guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson. But I would still say that I would rather have Watson going forward than Baker. I mean, Baker's running hot. It's completely unsustainable what he's doing, particularly on third down. He's averaging 8.7 yards per pass play on third down with 3 touchdowns and no picks. And he's also completed 71% of his attempts under pressure this season. And he completed less than half of his attempts under pressure coming into the year. So I think we can expect his performance on third down to regress, and we can expect his performance under pressure to regress going forward.
Yeah, I love Baker's his comment after the game the other day when he said Mike Evans is the best number 13 he's ever thrown the ball to. Oh, it's a good one. But let's look at at a QB who fans are starting to turn on. Justin Fields has been an absolute disaster, and he looks like he might be the worst QB in the league right now. I mean, the Bears are the biggest dumpster fire in the NFL as a whole right now, and a lot of fans are kind of starting to look forward to Caleb Williams being their QB next year. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it has been tough for Fields to start off. He only has a 5-yard average depth of target despite taking 3.18 seconds to throw, which is the 4th longest in the league. And no quarterback since tracking has ever finished with a time to throw more than 3.1 seconds with less than 8 air yards per attempt. So it's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about with Tua earlier. Fields is taking a long time to throw, and he's not throwing downfield. So, it's obviously working out terribly. He's just staying in the pocket way too long. He's been sacked on a league high 32% of his pressure since being drafted, while the NFL average over that stretch has just been 20%. So Fields really needs to get a better pocket presence. He's got to get the ball out faster. And if he doesn't see his first or second read, he's got to take off.
Yeah, I mean, didn't we see almost the same thing happen last year?
Yeah, I mean, we know the adjustment. It's starting to scramble more. Fields is an electric runner. He's more rushing EPA during his first 2 seasons than any quarterback of the last 20 years. And we saw the same scenario play out in 2022. Fields had less than a 40% success rate through the first 5 weeks of the season. And then he started running against Washington. I believe that was a Thursday nighter. The Bears ended up losing that game, but it showed him a path to success. And the Bears had a 47% success rate the rest of the season. Now, Fields only has 5 designed runs in 2023. And I know you can't coach your bets, but I believe that the frustration in Chicago is going to force offensive coordinator Luke Getsy to call more runs for Fields, and he'll also start scrambling more just in order to save his season, because it's just been such a disaster to start off.
Yeah, I mean, what should we expect from the Bears passing this week if they want to be successful?
So when he does pass, I mean, Fields has 21 targets to running backs, which leads the NFL. And defending running backs as pass catchers out of the backfield has always been a weakness of Steve Spagnuolo's defense. The Chiefs allowed 5.9 yards per target to running backs last season, which ranked 23rd in the NFL. So I think Fields can get a little bit of a screen game going, and the Bears should also get the matchups they want across from weaker Kansas City cornerbacks Joshua Williams and Jaylen Watson to line up wide receiver DJ Moore, who gained 14.9 yards per target last week. So hopefully Fields can find DJ Moore downfield more often. He can get a little screen game going. And then if there's nothing there, take off. I mean, you're an electric runner. Take off.
Yeah, I mean, the key to success for him is obviously using those boots. So I assume we'll see him get those things moving this week. But let's move over to our next segment, which is stock up, stock down. Who do you see having their stock trending up right now?
Well, for me, stock up is Matt LaFleur, Packers head coach. He's been great to start the season and is beginning to justify the offense that he wanted to run, but got pushback from Aaron Rodgers when that pair was working the last few seasons. I mean, Jordan Love leads all quarterbacks with a 0.48 EPA per play, despite a league low negative 8.6 completion percentage versus expectation. What does that tell you? It tells you that Love hasn't been that good, but it doesn't matter because Matt LaFleur is in his bag. It's been an incredible scheme so far. And now we are seeing that Christian Watson might come back, and Watson could add a real spark to this Green Bay offense. He averaged 3.32 yards per route run against man coverage as a rookie, which ranked 5th in the NFL between A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson. And receiver performance versus man is more predictive than against zone. So we could see Watson have a monster second season. He's back on the practice field this week. And Saints safety Marcus May has been suspended for the next 3 games for violating the NFL's policy on substance abuse. So if May is out, there could be room behind this New Orleans secondary for Watson if he's able to suit up on Sunday.
Yep, super excited to see Watson come back. He's been highly anticipated, but whose stock is starting to fall for you?
Stock down. Dolphins linebacker Jerome Baker. He has not had a good start in Vic Fangio's defense, and he could be in for another rough week. Denver running back Samaje Perine is doing great playing the Alvin Kamara role in Sean Payton's offense. Perine leads all running backs with a 75% receiving success rate, and he is averaging 0.39 EPA per target. And Vic Fangio's defense obviously gives up a ton underneath, playing those 2 high shells. The Dolphins have surrendered 6.3 yards per target to running backs this season, and Miami's linebacker Jerome Baker is being targeted every 5.6 cover snaps. That's the 6th most in the league. So I could see that maybe even going up. I mean, I could see Sean Payton attacking Baker a ton using Perine as a receiver. And Baker also grades as PFF's 3rd worst run defender in the NFL. And the Dolphins are allowing a league high 61% rush success rate. So I expect Payton to attack Baker both with running backs as receivers and just running backs on the ground.
All right, well, let's move over and let's look at some of the weather of the week. Last week, you had a great shot out there. There was obviously the perfect weather in Arizona, great scoring conditions, and we saw a lot of points there. So what are we seeing this week?
Well, there could be intermittent rain showers in the afternoon, and we could see a wet field in Washington once again, like we saw in week 1 when the Commanders and Cardinals put up just 458 combined yards of offense on a sticky day. And it'll be basically the same for Baltimore too, as those stadiums are only 30 miles apart. So I'll be monitoring the weather reports for both Washington and Baltimore come Sunday.
Let's move over to our DraftKings player of the slate. Last week, you picked Zach Moss at $4,700, and he went off for 20.7 points. I mean, he was even in that $1 million maker lineup at the end. So, I mean, let's keep that going. And who do you got for this week?
Well, I hope that Zach Moss performance makes up for all the Richie James hype I was spewing this offseason because, woof, I mean, only 3 routes for Richie last week and a muff punt. But I still maintain Sky Moore is not the answer for the Chiefs at wide receiver alongside MVS. So we'll see who else steps up. I still think it could be Richie, but I'm going to pull off the hype train for Richie James to this point. Anyways, back to DraftKings. My player of the slate this week is Jonathan Mingo at a very low price of $3,400. Mingo leads the Panthers this season with 77 routes and 13 targets, and I like the passing game for Carolina to bounce back on Sunday.
Yeah, what have the Panthers faced that have kind of given them troubles with the passing game?
Well, they've gone against two defensive coordinators from the same tree. I mean, Falcons defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen worked under Saints head coach Dennis Allen last year, and those guys love to play aggressive man defense. And the Panthers' mediocre wide receiver group just could not separate for Bryce Young against that man coverage. Bryce Young was one of two quarterbacks with less than 40% of his throws into open windows in the first 2 weeks of the season.
So are things going to look different this week for Bryce Young?
Well, first, we don't know if it's going to be Bryce Young or Andy Dalton. It looks like it's actually trending towards Andy Dalton, but he's not really a downgrade from Young. He actually might be an upgrade. I mean, Dalton averaged 6.7 yards per pass play last season, which ranks 7th among all quarterbacks. And Dalton won't have the same problem that Young faced in the first 2 weeks with aggressive man defenses on the other side of the field. I mean, Seattle's defense ranks just 25th in man coverage, and Carolina's coaching staff should be able to scheme more open receivers this week. The Panthers receivers are averaging 39% more yards per route run against zone than man this season. So I think Dalton is going to look a lot more comfortable than we've seen Young to start the season. Even if it wasn't all Bryce Young's fault, and maybe that will be the takeaway for some people at the after this week, they'll say, "Oh, well, look, Andy Dalton turned it around. Bryce Young has been terrible." I actually think it has more to do just with the matchups that the Panthers offense has had in these first 3 weeks.
Let's shift it over to our primetime preview. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Should we expect this Raiders defense to look a little better this week?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think this Raiders defense is going to be a reprieve for Kenny Pickett after going against the Browns and 49ers, who ranked first and third, respectively, in dropback EPA per play allowed. And the Raiders just haven't been able to get off the field all season, as opponents have gotten a first down on a league-high 88% of their opportunities this season.
Yeah, I mean, how are the Steelers going to attack the Raiders this week?
Well, Pittsburgh is one of 7 offenses targeting running backs on more than a quarter of passes, which should pay dividends on Sunday night. I mean, Las Vegas defensive coordinators Patrick Graham's defense allowed 6.4 yards per target to running backs in 2022, which was 29th in the NFL. And now the Raiders are playing 2 high shells at a top 5 rate in the NFL, which should leave plenty of space open underneath for Pittsburgh's running backs to exploit.
Do you have any worries about the Raiders pass rush this week?
Well, that is certainly a concern for the Steelers offense. Max Crosby already has 10 pressures, which ranks 6th among edge defenders. But Okorafor, the Steelers' right tackle, ranks 11th in pass blocking efficiency. And so I think he can battle with Crosby a little bit. The Steelers can also probably negate a little bit of that pass rush with the running back screens that we talked about. And when Pickett does have clean pockets, he can look downfield for George Pickens versus Raiders cornerback Jacorian Bennett, who ranks 8th worst in PFF coverage grade.
So should we expect this Raiders offense to kind of ramp it up a little bit? I mean, they got off to a slow start.
Well, from a point standpoint, they certainly have been off to a slow start. And it's really been tough sledding for that running game. It's a league low 22% rush success rate. But the Raiders actually rank 4th, averaging 0.27 EPA per dropback. The reason their points have been so low is because they just haven't run a ton of plays. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo has a 56% success rate when targeting running back Josh Jacobs, as Josh McDaniels is one of the best screen designers in the NFL. And Jacobs will continue to be a threat catching passes out of the backfield this week, as Pittsburgh's defense allowed 6.1 yards per target to opposing running backs last year, ranking 25th.
Yeah, so what effect is targeting Jacobs going to have on this game?
Well, I mean, it's almost, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's really similar to what I expected from the Steelers offense. The screen game is going to slow down the Steelers pass rush, particularly edge rusher TJ Watt, who has 5 quarterback hits and 4 sacks this season. I mean, what a monster.
Insane.
That is insane in 2 games. But Watt only had 1 quarterback hit in his game versus Las Vegas last season. Goes to show that Josh McDaniels is very aware and concerned about limiting Watt. And the Raiders actually lead the league in pass blocking efficiency this season. Right guard Greg Van Roten has not allowed a single pressure this year. And Van Roten should shut down Pittsburgh interior defender Larry Ogunjobi, who ranks 7th in pass rushing efficiency. And Ogunjobi will not have his running mate again on the inside in Cameron Hayward, who ranked 4th in pass rushing efficiency last year among interior defenders, but he's obviously out again for week 3.
Yeah, do you worry about missing Minka this week?
Yeah, so I think they will be without Fitzpatrick. He was released from the hospital on Monday night after a chest contusion, so I'm not expecting him to be out there. And Fitzpatrick ranked third in PFF coverage grade. Actually, sorry, he ranked third in PFF grade among safeties last year. And so he's worth about a half point to our metrics. So it is definitely a concern for the Pittsburgh defense. And McDaniels could scheme some shots down the field with Fitzpatrick not out there lurking in those robber roles that he loves.
Yeah, it was weird seeing that Mika injury. It just looked really awkward, but hopefully he can get back soon. But what's your prediction for this game?
Well, first, looking at the market, we saw this open at pick, and now a ton of Raiders money has moved this to an expensive 2.5. Now, our model favors the Raiders by 2.1 with a predicted total of 44.8. So not a ton of value side or total. If anything, I'm leaning with the Steelers here. I kind of want to let the market settle. I mean, if I can get an expensive 3 with the Steelers, or if it comes back towards them and I can use the Steelers in a teaser, that sounds pretty good to me. But right now, just holding off on the side and total.
All right, your primetime prop last week was Adam Thielen over 2.5 receptions, and he hit that on the first drive of the game. You got any props for the Steelers-Raiders game?
Well, I'm going to go with Jaylen Warren over his receptions this week. I mean, the Steelers have a 0% success rate when targeting Najee Harris, and I would hope that Matt Canada is smart enough to work Warren more into the passing game than Harris. I mean, I guess you can't trust anything from Matt Canada, really, but I think that he will at least give Warren more targets than Harris this week. And we already talked about why I think the Steelers should be targeting running backs in this particular matchup. And Warren ranks better than average in EPA per target to running backs this season. I mean, the Raiders are playing so much soft zone. They're forcing all these checkdowns underneath. I think Kenny Pickett is going to have to check it down to Jaylen Warren quite a bit. So I would say Warren over receptions is my prop this week, and you should put him in your showdown lineups as well.
Yeah, it's tough to watch these Steelers games and watch slow motion Najee run down the field, and here comes Warren popping off out there. But
slow motion Najee.
Oh gosh, yeah, make a graphic for that one. All right, that will do it for our week 3 preview. Make sure to head over to drbobsports.com to check out the free analysis for this weekend, and we will be back next Friday for week 4. So as always, make sure to like and subscribe.